Hello, welcome back. This is the second part of the fourth lecture and the final lecture in Computer Skills module. I'm your instructor, Dr. Murat Tunç. In the first part of this lecture, we end our discussion with uh, value returning function and void functions. So just as a reminder, we talked about functions can have two uh, uh, so a function can have a parameter, can be with or without parameters. So they're also called inputs, right? So I like to call this input and a function with or without return value. And I like to call this output. So they're not a must, they are optional, and a function can be without inputs, without outputs, or it can be with input and with output, so vice versa. So here we are going to talk about the output, the value returning function or void function. So a void function is no return value. So they are non-value returning functions. So a function that returns a value is called value returning functions. And the function terminates, this is critical, when the return statement is executed. On the other hand, a function that doesn't return a value, they are called void functions. So this is an example of a value returning function. So we have this function definition in here. So this is the function. And this part is what I like to call is the main method, or the main function, or the main statements. So we have a print statement in the main method. We defined our function, but we didn't invoke it just yet. So here in the print method, we have the grade is and get grade. So this is when we invoke the function. So whenever you see the name of the function, get grade, you are invoking it or calling the function. So we invoke the function and we send this parameter 78.5 as the value of the score. So here the score is 78.5. So we check if it is greater than 90, false, greater than 80, false, greater than 70, true. Okay. Since this is true, we do not check the rest of it because they have this else, right? So they condition on the previous one being false, but since the previous one is true, we skip the rest of it and we return C. Here the console is printing the grade is C. That is what is printed on the console. It was a value returning functions. We returned C and then we printed it. On the other hand, we can have a void function. So here inside this function definition, you don't see any return. That's fine. You don't have to. But just be careful how you invoke the function. Because when you invoke the function, you don't get a value return. So you cannot assign that value to a variable, for instance. We are going to see an example of this. So this is the main method. This is a no return function. So inside the main method, we printed the grade as. Okay, so here the grade, so assume this part is the console, the grade is, and then we invoke the function. So we invoke the function, or we call the function. And again, we passed 78.5 as an input to score. Here 78.5 is not greater than 90 or 80, but it is greater than 70. So we skip the rest of it. And we are inside here and we print C. So both of these functions, whether they are value returning or void functions, the console is the same. So you can use different types of functions, but the out result is can be exactly the same. So what we see on the console is the grade is C, but we use two different types of function to do exactly the same operation. All right, another review exercise. So we will have more than 10 in this lecture. So this is number 5. So we have this function here, and here is the main method. So we invoke the function, right? So what do we have in the main method? We have a variable. We define an integer variable, a variable called integer. And we have an assignment operation. What do? We assign right-hand side value to the left-hand side, right? But what is my integer 5 and 14? We don't know, right? So the value of it will be assigned to integer. But the problem is here, when we invoke the function 5 and 14, so num2 divided by 5, what it does, it prints 14 by 5. So it basically prints 2.8, but there is no return. So no return, right? So this function doesn't give us any output in return. So we invoke it, but we get as a return here, return nothing. So we don't have any value that is returned. We only printed, so this is a void function. So there is no return value to it. So the problem here is we cannot assign anything to integer because we don't have any value, no value here. So 2.5 is just printed, but it is not returned, it's just printed. So since we have no value, the value of integer is actually none, okay? Because my integer function does not return a value. So we define an integer, but its value is not set. We don't have any value. So the integer is equal to none, okay? All right. So what does the following print on the console? We have print string plus number. And then we invoke my print. So let's invoke this 5 and 14. So here don't be confused because string and number, so they are just the names of the variables. So it doesn't make 5 a string. So it is not that, okay? So 5 here is number, because this is a number. So if we, for instance, sent 5 in double quotation marks, then the answer would be different. And we're actually going to see an example of it, so I don't want to spoil anything. So what we have here is that we have 5 plus 14, and that's 19. And we print 19 on the console. So string is an integer variable, although the name is string, and it stores the value of 5. Number, on the other hand, is 14, and then we print 5 plus 14, which is 19. Okay. Okay, so what does this one print? So again, we invoke my print. String is 5, number is 14, and we print 5 comma 14. So on the console, we first print 5, and then we print 14. So it prints 5 and 14, okay? So we print them one by one. So remember, comma separates the arguments in the print, right? So we print first 5 and then 14. Okay, so now this is the string plus numbers that I was referring to in the review exercise 5, I guess, or 6. So now 5 is text, or it's string. 14 is a number or an integer. Here when we invoke 5 as a text plus 14, so this will give us an error. So string is 5 as a string literal, and number is 14, but you cannot add a string literal with an integer literal, because 5 is text or string, whereas 14 is number. So this is an error, okay? All right, so we have an in-class exercise. So we were asked to write a program that asks the user to enter 2 integers, okay? So users answers num1 and num2. And then we are going to invoke a function that takes these 2 integers. What the function does, the function returns true if the first number is greater than the second, else it returns false. So we have a value returning function, and we are going to return a Boolean value, true or false, depending on the first number is greater or not. And then the program prints whether number 1 is greater than number 2 using this function. Okay, so I'm not going to stop the video here. Instead, I'll ask you to pause and try to do it by yourself, because in 5 seconds I'll do it right in front of you here. Okay, so if you like to do it by yourself, if you like to exercise, please pause now and then do it, and come back 10 minutes later or as soon as you finish, and then you can compare how you write the code with my coding style. Okay. All right, so I am going to open. All right, so this is what we have here. This is an in-class exercise. All right, step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 4. Okay, so step 1, what was step 1? Okay, so we are going to ask a user to enter 2 integers. Okay, So user input two numbers from the user. Okay. And then we are going to invoke a function. Here we can invoke the function. So in order to invoke the function, we have to define it, right? So we are going to define the function. Let's actually define and invoke the function in the same step. And then the function returns true and false, okay. And the third step is actually now, okay, print to display whether the first number is greater than the second number. Okay. All right, so we sort of divided into 3 steps because the third bullet here, it only explains what the value, what the function does. So we already have that in the second step. So here we have now 1. Let's make it float because we didn't say that it's supposed to be integer. Please input the number and press enter. Num2, again the same. So please input another number and press enter. Okay, so here we define is first greater. So this is the function. We are going to input 2 numbers, num1 and num2. And then we have if num1 is greater than num2, we return true, right? Otherwise, we return false. So we defined the function. Now we are going to invoke the function. So we have, let's actually do it in the third step. If is first greater num1 and num2, we print the first number is greater than the second number, right? Else we do the opposite. The second number is greater than the first number. Okay, let's try. Please input a number, let's say 7.5, and then 9. Okay, here it goes. The second number is greater than the first one. Okay, let's do another 8 and 1. Here we go. We get the first one is greater than the second one. Okay, so a question to you: if I enter the exact number, what happens? So if I enter 5 and 5, so here it goes this: the second number is greater than the first number, but in fact it is not the case. So we are going to correct this one. We just say the first number is not greater than the second number. So here if we enter the same number like 10 and 10, that the first number is not. So we don't really know if the second is greater because it can be equal. So we decided to change the print, okay? Okay, so let's see the answer. So we have my comparison. So we start with the result false. If the first one is greater than the second one, the result will be true. Otherwise, it was false anyway. So if this is false, so we skip this part and then we return false because we started off with the definition false, right? So it's only when we correct this false, if this one is actually greater than the second one, then it is true. Otherwise, it's false. So there are multiple ways, so there is not always a single answer in programming, so you can do it in separate ways, whichever seems convenient to you. And then we inputted two integers. In this case, I did use float, but you can sort of, so you have that flexibility. You can say, please input an integer and then convert it to int right away. I didn't want to do it. And then we have if my comparison num1 and num2. So here we didn't compare this with anything because this will return us either true or false, right? So here we have an if statement, and this is either true or false. If it is true, then we go the first number is greater. Else, if it is false, and then we go the second number is greater or they're equal. Okay, so how do we call or invoke a function? So let's trace. So this is our main method, and this is the function, okay? So here we start off with the main method. We have I equals to 5, all right? And then, oh, so yeah, I equals 5, and then now j is equal to 2. Okay, so we have 5 and 2, right? Here we invoke the function. Invoke with 5 and 2 as the two parameters. 5 goes to num1, 2 goes to num2. Always make the first one equal to the first one here, and the second one equals to the second one. And then we go, okay, so now we are inside the function. So we pass the value of I, which is 5, to num1 here, and the value of 2 to num2, okay? We check 5 greater than 2. That is true. And then we are inside the if block, we skip else, okay? Skip this part. So we assign result to num1, which is 5. And then we return 5. Where do we return it? To the same place that we invoke the function. So here, so this box is 5, because that's what the return value is. And now just like I equals 5, we have k equals 5. Instead of 5, we wrote this guy, but at the end, what we get as a return, 5. So now k becomes 5 as well. Okay, so here we return 5 to k, and then we executed the print statement. So the print statement here is the maximum between I is 5, and j is 2, is k was 5, right? That's actually true. The maximum between 5 and 2 is 5. Okay. All right, so we have another set of review exercise questions. And these questions are, is the following code okay? That is, runs without an error. So here I'm going to show you problematic code, programs, and then you are going to spot if this is actually a problem for the computer or not. Okay, so here we have the function. This one is the main method, right? So we invoke mySum 10 and 2. Okay, let's invoke mySum 10 and 2. But wait a minute. We don't have two inputs here. We only have one formal parameter. We are supposed to send two parameters, but there is only one. So this will be an error because down in here, we also used num2, which we didn't define it over there. And then we are trying to return something num2, but we didn't define it. So there is no num2 here, it's only num1. So the correct version would be, for instance, def mySum num1 and num2. So this would be the correct version. But this is actually wrong because we didn't define num2. Right? So it's not defined in the function header. Okay, so let's see. So now we have num1 and num2. Num1 is 10, right? This goes, num2 is 2, num1 is 10. Num1 plus equals, so plus equals, remember, this was increment by. So you add 10 plus 2, 12. So num1 will become 12. Num2 will be 2 plus 5, 7, right? 12. And we return 12 plus 7. We return 19. Okay? Here we return 19. But, so the problem here is we have another num1 increment by 10. Is that an error? So is that okay? I'm asking this because after return, we go back to the main method. So this part, actually, we do not execute. Because remember, as soon as the function sees a return, it terminates. Okay? So having said that, this is, it still runs without error. So it's actually, so there is no error in this code. After the return, the function terminates. So here, the red box, so this part, is redundant. So please do not write any code after return because they are not going to be executed. So we have an unreachable code here. Okay, so after return, we have 1 and 2 unreachable codes. But this is still okay. It's just that the second return is not executed. So they are both unreachable code, but you can still write a second return. Python doesn't show an error. It's just that they won't be executed. But in this example, so here we have the function. Here is the method, right? Main method. So we invoke this function. Okay, so here the problem is, since Python executes from top to bottom, it executes line by line, right? So it first executes this line, and then the second line, and then the fourth line. Here, when we execute this, the function is not executed yet. So the function is not defined when we are at this point. So at this point, mySum function is not defined, okay? So then we are trying to invoke a function that is not defined, which will be an error. So always define the function before invoking it. So always put this one above the line that you're invoking the function, okay? If you put it below, then it's going to be an error. All right, so this is one final topic that I'd like to discuss. It's called a call stack. So each time a function is invoked, the system creates an activation record. So an activation record, it stores parameters and variables for the function. It places the activation record in an area of the memory. That memory area is called a call stack, okay? So we invoke a function. When we invoke a function, we create a space in the computer's memory. This is the call stack. So we define, so we do our calculations inside here. So all these variables, they are local variables. When we return, all these variables are gone. Will be gone, okay? When we return to the main method. Okay, so variables defined inside a function will be local variables. And when we return, these local variables will be gone, okay? Only when we are inside the call stack, we can reach to these variables. When we return, these variables will be gone. Okay, so this is actually really important. So I'm going to give an example here. So here we have the function, and here is our main method. Okay, so this is the main program. So the main program has its own call stack. So this is where we are going to use the main program's variable. And when we define the function, we are going to create a call stack for the function over here, okay? So you'll see what I mean by it in just a few minutes. So we defined the function and we start to code from this guy. So num1 is declared and initialized. So here we have num1 equals to 5. Next, num2 declared and initialized. We are still in the main program. So num2 is 14. Okay. And then we go and invoke my integer with 5 and 14 as the parameters. So we invoke my integer 5 and 14. So here, this is our call stack. So this part is called the call stack. And the numbers in call stack for my integer function and the variables, they are different than the variables in the main program. So for instance, if we change this number or this number, 5 and 14, we do not change these ones in the main program. So we only change inside the function, we only change what we have inside our call stack. And these are the local variables. So they are different than the ones in the main program. So they are not the same. Okay. So we pass these values, 5 and 14, to num1 and num2. And we are inside this function. We are inside the call stack. We increment num1 by 1. Okay. So we make num1 6. But this num1 stays the same. So we do not increment this one. Why? Because we are inside the function, we can only change these local variables in our call stack. So we don't have control to the variables over here, so we do not control this part. Okay, so we only control our call stack. So we print num1, which num1, since we are inside this function, we can only reach to our call stack. So we print 6. So here is the console. We have 6 printed. And we return 14 remainder 6. So what is 14 remainder 6? Now 2, 12. The remainder is 2, right? So we return 2. Where do we return this to? We return it where we invoke the function. So we return 2 and we print 2 because it says print, right? And now that we are back, so see this call stack is gone because we are back into the main program. So now if we print num1, now it is this num1. It's not the num1 that used to be in our call stack. Okay. So let's do an exercise, and and I hope this will be clear. And this will be our final exercise for today's lecture. So it's going to be a bit difficult and a bit more involved. So I'll take my time and I'll try to explain it as much as possible. So we have a function, and this is our main program. So let me put up two call stacks, two spaces. So this is the main program. And we have num1 and num2 here. Okay. Num1 is 15. Num2, we don't know. We will wait until we return something. So now we only invoke 33 and 15. So here we have our call stack. So this will be the first call stack. We'll have a second one when we invoke myInteger for the second time. Okay. So we have 33 and 15. We pass them on to num1 and num2. So num1 is 33, num2 is 15. Okay. All right, so we have 33 and 15. Inside the call stack, inside this function, we go 33, integer division 5, which is 6.6. But since this is an integer division, we delete the 0.6 and then we have 6. So this will be the new value of num1. Okay, because num1 is integer division by 5 to itself. 6 will be the new value. So here 33 will become 6. We printed num1. So assume this is the console. So we first printed 6. Okay. This guy right here. Because the question asks what does the following print on the console. So we print 6. We are now here. We return num2, integer division. Remainder num1. So num2, let's see, num2 was 15. Remainder by 6 is 3, okay? So we return 3. Where do we return it? To the place where we invoke the function. And then we set 3 as the new value of num2 in the main program. So we are no longer in the call stack. Now we cannot reach this part. We are out of the function that we invoke, so all these parts are deleted. But the main program stays the same, okay? And then we print. What do we print? We don't know because we again invoke this function. So we invoke another time myInteger method. So we have another call stack. So what do we invoke myInteger with? What are the two input parameters? num1 by num2. So num1, 15, multiplied by num2, 3. So 45 and num2 was 3, right? So we invoke the call stack with num1 equals to 45, num2 equals to 3, okay? Okay. Again, we have num1, integer division 5. So num1 was 45. If we divide 45 by 5, we get 9. And 9 will be the new value of num1. So we update num1, that becomes 9. Here we print num1, which is 9. So again, on the console, we have 9 printed. Okay. And then the return will be 3 by, so num2 by num1. So 3 by 9, 0, 0, the remainder is 3. And this is where we return our function, our value to, right? So myInteger, this part will be 3, and that's what we print out. We print 3. And this call stack is also gone because we return something, and all these numbers are gone. But what is printed on the console stays the same. So now we are back in here. We print num2, which was 3. So we print 3 on the console. So it prints into, so the answer is 6933. Okay. So it first prints 6, and then 9, and then 3, and then finally 3. So here is a big explanation of why that happens. So we first invoke with actual parameters of 33 and 15 here. And then num1 in my integer becomes 6. We print 6, so here 33. Integer division 5 is 6, right? So we print this part. And then we return 3. Num2 will be 3. We invoke my integer for the second time with 45 and 3. Okay. With 45 and 3. So 45 becomes 9, and then we print 9. What do we return is 3. Here we return 3, and that's what we print. And then finally, we print num2, which was, that's still 3, so we print that. Okay. So it first prints 6, and then 9, and then 3 and 3. All right, so this is the final slide of computer skills module. So the benefits of functions are, so you can write a function once and reuse it. So that's the first and foremost benefit. So you can sort of hide the information, so you don't have to show the implementation to everyone. You can just explain what it does. It sort of reduces complexity. So they're really useful, and you will use them in your subsequent courses of programming. Okay, so that's the end of the computer skills module. So again, I would like to thank you for your participation, and I hope that you enjoyed this class. If you have any questions, feel free to send an email to me. So my email address is m.tunc@tilburguniversity.com or ubt.nl. Okay, so thank you again for your participation. Feel free to reach out to me, and you are always welcome to the tutorial sessions. We are going to have a teaching assistant. He will be a Dutch speaker, so if you feel like speaking in your native language, that is also possible in the tutorials. Otherwise, I'll also be present. You can also send your ask your questions to me or send me an email. I hope that you enjoyed it. Feel free to share any thoughts with me by email, or you can come visit me in my office. So my office is in the Koopmans building, 8th floor, 26. Please take an appointment before coming to my office and see me. I hope you enjoyed it, and I would like to thank you wholeheartedly for your participation and for your patience throughout these pre-recorded lectures. And I wish you success in your future courses and your future career. And I hope that you find this programming skills module beneficial for your future endeavors. Thank you. Bye.